Take a look at the world around you. Now, imagine the world without things, because at some point, none of these things existed. Everything has been invented. Somebody had to say, I want to make a device to get people to go from A to B faster than a horse and carriage. Then they thought, let's give people more freedom. Let's make it more personal. Then let's make it bigger. Let's make it go further. Let's make it go faster. You get the picture. There's just no stopping us. I'm Britt Wray, and while I've spent years in the lab and studied things like synthetic biology, what I really love to do is tell science stories. In this case, stories about inventors. And while I haven't actually invented anything yet, I really want to know what makes inventors tick. It's in our nature to invent things, and that kickstart to creativity can come from the strangest of places.
My first toy was a box of transistors, and from there I would take my hot glue gun and garbage from around the house and piece together inventions.
I was really excited about physics in high school, not because I was good at it, but I love that problem-solving element.
You can imagine the level of adrenaline, because you have a one-of-a-kind thing in the world that does this magic trick.
You have to dream. Dreams are the only beautiful thing about, living. You need to believe that we can be better, that we can do more.
Now that's passion. And it's a trait inventors need because there's a lot of competition out there. In North America, over 500,000 patents are filed each year. No doubt, all with big dreams attached. What is it that drives inventors to dedicate years of their lives to their inventions? Is it fame? Fortune? Or is it that they just can't let it go?
There's still a problem to solve. I want to see if this works because I don't want to walk away from it.
I guess that's just the nature of invention. When you picture inventors, chances are this is what comes to mind. Old, mostly dead, white-haired men. That's the stereotype. Inventors in the real world are real people, of course, as diverse a group as their inventions. What I'd like to know is there a common denominator? Is there one single trait that makes an inventor want to invent? And what is it that motivates inventors? I suspect that for some, it's that notion of creating the proverbial better mousetrap, making things more efficient, and in the process, making the world a bit of a better place. This invention is changing lives. Following a motorcycle accident, Michael Reimer was left without feeling below his waist. Today, he's come to the University of Alberta to go for a walk.
I wasn't expecting to be this tall again, to be quite frank. I was a little afraid of heights. I'm used to looking up at everybody. It was a huge change.
ReWalk is a wearable robotic exoskeleton that provides powered hip and knee motion to enable individuals with spinal cord injury to stand upright, walk, turn, and climb and descend stairs. ReWalk was invented by an Israeli doctor who was paralyzed after an ATV accident.
It bounced against the tree. I flew through the branches of the tree, and I realized that flying through benches of tree is for birds, but not humans. So I broke my neck.
You got to admit, a pretty good sense of humor for a man who immediately realized that he was quadriplegic. Amit spent the next 9 months recovering in hospital.
And then I was wondering, how come wheelchair, this is it? This is the only solution in this sophisticated world?
Amit's quest to find an alternative to the wheelchair was rife with challenges.
Of course, the technical challenges, the electromechanics, software, and so. But the main challenge was to understand what is needed by the person. What is walking? How do you turn? How do you come back? The psychology of the person. How do you convince a paralyzed person to dare go into this device and stand and walk?
Amit admits he learned a lot just by listening to people.
I thought a device should contain boots. There was a girl that was first using it. She said, I don't want your boots. I want my shoes, and I want to replace different colors and so on. And that changed my way of thinking that it should be kind of foot holder inside the shoe.
The ReWalk exoskeleton can restore the functionality of walking. Individual movements are powered by motors that are controlled by a small panel worn on the wrist. However, it does require the user to have sufficient upper body strength to maintain balance using crutches. While ReWalk can help about 10% of people who use wheelchairs, it does not work for everyone, including its inventor, Amit Goffer. But he's not the type of guy to complain.
Crying over my lack of not being able to walk, I don't have time for all this. I'm working so many hours every day. This is one thing. And the other thing is the family. I think I'm lucky.
Amit could have retired in the knowledge that he had made the world a better place. But he didn't. Amit's next invention was a device that would help people like him. The Up and Ride enables quadriplegics to move from sitting to an upright position. In doing so, it solves one of the most basic frustrations for wheelchair users.
The problem of being in a wheelchair is dignity. You're going to elevator, restaurant. Your face is always at the level of the backside of a person. It's an awkward situation for them as well as for me.
The battery-operated device can move around flat surfaces with ease. Negotiating uneven surfaces outside was a mechanical challenge.
The biggest challenge was to make the system stable, to go on slopes without stability problems, for people to feel safe in it.
The chair constantly balances the user. The person remains in the center of the chair, which means the center of gravity doesn't really change. This makes it stable and reduces the chances to tip over. The first time I stood with my colleagues, I was able to stand and have a drink with them, eye levels. It was like so exciting for me.
Amit's inventions have touched hundreds of people around the world.
I got enough excitement seeing the families for the first time, seeing their beloved ones walking again. It was something that you cannot imagine.
Like many inventors, Amit is in no rush to retire.
My work is also my hobby, and I like my work very much. And I like, more than that, the interaction with the people that I work with. So I don't think I'm going to retire soon.
Amit's inventions have had an obvious and profound impact on people's lives. And then, there are inventions that are deceptively subtle. Most of us take it for granted, the seemingly simple act of eating a meal. But for those suffering from a disease that causes tremors or uncontrolled movements, what should be a pleasurable experience can be daunting, not to mention embarrassing. Inventor Anupam Pathak decided to do something about it.
One big thing that I've always really wanted to do was to apply things I was learning to just help people. I was really drawn to people with pathological tremor, and I started to talk with, just after talking and meeting with people, patients in the hospital, just realized that this is something that it was a huge opportunity that I couldn't really pass up.
Are you one of those people who, as a child, was always taking things apart and trying to reassemble them?
Yeah, I took everything apart.
Anupam invented Liftwear Steady, a spoon specifically designed to counteract unwanted body movement. A sensor inside the tip of the attachment measures a person's movements and sends electrical signals to a small computer inside the handle.
If I'm, for example, holding this and I'm shaking, it will measure how much to the left I moved, and then it will determine that I was tremor and tell one of the actuators inside to move this attachment in the equal and opposite direction to that tremor. So if I put the spoon on here, it's now on, and so you can see that even though I'm shaking, which I'm shaking quite a bit, it's moving in the opposite direction to make sure that the tip here is moving as little as possible.
How does it know between a voluntary movement and an involuntary movement?
We actually had to try like hundreds of different variations of algorithms on this little computer to tell that difference. Usually it's about the speed and the nature of the person's movements. The computer basically will make that decision and then respond appropriately.
I have a neurological disorder called essential tremor, and not very much is known about it. It's benign in the sense that you can't die from it, but not in the sense of the things that you're prevented from doing.
One of those things is eating with confidence.
Tracy, would you mind giving me a little demonstration of what it's like to try and pick up some Cheerios with just a normal spoon?
Sure. And this is a little hard because plastic is not weighted, so it's a little harder, but so it kind of looks like this.
Oh, wow.
And okay, I'm really it takes a lot of concentration.
Is it better to lift up the bowl sometimes?
Yes, often I will at home. There we go.
So that's quite difficult. Yeah.
And then with the spoon,
that's really steady.
So I think with the plastic spoon, you know, I'm trying to maybe lessen my tremor. I mean, that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I use a spoon, and in fact, I'm just thinking about this as we're talking, I'm not trying to stop my tremor.
You don't even think about it?
I can just keep tremoring away. I can just keep shaking. And that's not a problem because it's doing the work of countering the shaking.
Wow.
And I can pull this and...
You can go anywhere and they don't fall off at all, and you don't have to bring up the bowl.
Anupam's advice to budding inventors?
Don't be afraid to share ideas. Don't be afraid to even share early concepts. A lot of people are scared that people will steal ideas. I think the benefits of getting the feedback far outweigh that.
Sometimes the most powerful inventions don't have that extra wow factor or seem that cutting edge. But to see what that everyday object, a spoon, has done to transform Tracy's life is something I'll never forget. This next invention is tiny, no bigger than my little finger, but its implications are huge. The Wyss Institute for Biologically Inspired Engineering, part of Harvard University, develops solutions for healthcare, energy, architecture, robotics, and manufacturing. To date, more than 20 startup companies have been created to transform their inventions into commercial products. Dr. Donald Ingber is its founding director.
We were tasked with thinking the future, and we looked around and we saw that the boundaries between the disciplines are all breaking down. The boundary between living and non-living is breaking down, and that we've really uncovered enough about how nature builds, controls, and manufactures where we felt that we could leverage biological principles to develop new engineering innovations. That's what we call biologically inspired engineering as opposed to biomedical engineering or bioengineering.
I'm here today to talk about one specific invention.
What are these organs on a chip that you've invented?
Organs on chip are, actually I happen to have one here. This is an organ on chip. It's a small device. As you can see, it's the size of a computer memory stick, optically clear. It's actually made out of a flexible rubber-like material.
Lung on a chip consists of a membrane. On either side are human lung and capillary cells. Hollow channels allow air and blood to be pumped through, creating what is essentially a living, three-dimensional cross-section of a human lung.
We can literally mimic organ-level structure and function by culturing living human cells inside these chips.
Why did you want to make an organ on a chip?
We set about making organs on chips because, one of the biggest problems right now in the medical world is that it's incredibly expensive to make drugs. There's issues, ethical issues, because many animal lives are sacrificed. But the biggest problem is that the results obtained in animal testing often don't predict what happens when they get to a clinical trial. So there's a huge amount of failures. So the idea was if we could make these little chips lined by human cells and we could recapitulate not cell or tissue, but organ level functions and responses, that we might be actually able to predict human level responses using these instead of animals. So it could replace animal testing.
You're saying that an animal model such as a mouse or a monkey is just too biologically different from humans to necessarily have robust results every time we test.
Animal models, they sometimes can be reasonably effective, but actually many really don't scale well with what you see when you get to patients.
Wow. And that's how we've been doing drug testing the whole time up until this point?
And it's not just drugs, it's chemicals like industrial chemicals, foods, cosmetics. So it has a much broader relevance than drug development. The hope is that with these sorts of chips that you might be able to replace one animal model at a time.
Any reduction in animal testing has to be a good thing. And it's worth noting, Robert's organs on a chip is just one of more than 165 and counting patents he has to his name. It seems the man was destined to become an inventor.
When I was a kid, I loved science, but my hero was actually Thomas Edison. And so without, ever thinking about it, I kind of, you follow your passion and you get to where you want to be.
Are there any personality traits or characteristics that you've noticed inventors tend to have?
Getting outside their own head and taking a look at problems from ways they nor anyone else has ever looked at it before. Most people tend to look at problems and focus on a linear path. Invention's a very non-linear process. It's mixing and matching and melding. It's more like cooking.
Organs on a chip already developed include lung, intestine, kidney, and skin. The Wyss Institute has launched a startup company, Emulate, to get them out to biotechnology, pharmaceutical, and cosmetic companies, as well as academic institutions and hospitals for personalized medicine.
The idea is if it works, it could be used for personalized medicine. So maybe we make your lung on a chip and test drugs for you to say which is the best drug.
Which would be different from your lung on a chip, and potentially we're going to have different reactions.
It just changes the paradigm in terms of how you might approach speeding up the process, making it more successful, decreasing the cost.
That invention could be huge. It could change a lot in society, and I genuinely hope that it will.
I think it's safe to say that the most revolutionary invention of recent times, maybe even of all time, is the internet. And if you think the internet has changed every aspect of our lives, you ain't seen nothing yet. Lisa DeLuca is no ordinary inventor. Her employer, IBM, has bestowed upon her the grand title of Master Inventor. And here's why. Lisa has filed well over 600 patents.
Determining resource instant placement in a network computing environment, instant conversation and thread, coordinated deep tagging of media content,
stream playback with
real-time shared web browsing, social networking content, auto configuration of cloud instances based on context.
Makes me feel really unproductive, Lisa.
Her main focus is inventing software related to the Internet of Things.
At IBM, we say it's digitizing our physical world. So anything around us could be connected to the internet or connected to each other. So sharing of data.
What would be an example of something you would connect to the Internet of Things?
Watson Assistant allows you to use your voice. It's like a personal assistant. And that's definitely IoT because you can embed it in all sorts of devices. So imagine going into a hotel room and saying, open the blinds for me or turn on my favorite TV show without actually having to go press a button.
You can connect utensils to the Internet of Things, a toothbrush, toilet paper. I understand you have an invention that actually relates to toilet paper.
It was just a little sensor in the toilet paper roll. You could tell when you were running low on your supply, and then you can order more, have it automatically order for you.
Some people are not so excited about the idea of connecting every single object around them to the Internet. Mass surveillance and mass commercialization. How do you feel about concerns of the Internet of Things?
I mean, me personally, I'm like, the more the better. I think it just excites me to see more because I can see the potential of the future and where we're going to eventually get. At being part of IBM, of course, we take security very seriously and privacy, so all of that has to come into consideration.
It's clear to me that Lisa really loves being an inventor. And it got me wondering, does she ever switch off?
I wouldn't want to. I think that's part of the fun about being an inventor is once you invent a lot, you start recognizing what is patentable. So it's not like there's a switch. You just know.
How cool is it to be an inventor?
It's so cool. It's something I can put on my resume, and it's a fun conversation starter. Like, I'm an inventor. What? You don't look like an inventor. You're just a regular person. So I think that part of it's been really fun. It's mine forever. I'm an inventor.
So far, it's clear to me that inventors are motivated by a desire to help people. And, sure, if they can make some money along the way, then that's great. But what is it that inspires them? What is it that starts the creative process? I've been studying biology and nature for years, so for me, the most obvious source of inspiration is already right in front of us. We are constantly surrounded by the genius of nature. A research and development lab, 3.8 billion years in the making.
Lotus leaves can clean themselves and repel water. Shark skin can repel parasites like barnacles. Gecko feet produce adhesive. And they all do it naturally, without the need for man-made chemicals. When inventors are inspired by nature, it's called bio-inspiration. One of the best examples comes from Switzerland, when a man notices that some birds are stuck in his dog's fur. But instead of just throwing them away, he becomes fascinated by these spiky seed pods. He sees up close that they're actually covered in what appear to be tiny grappling hooks. And that man, George de Mestral, has a eureka moment. If he could just take that technology and apply it to material, he would have a very efficient fastener. And like that, Velcro was born. Canadian Jeff Karp is a professor of medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital, a teaching hospital for Harvard Medical School. He's also an inventor and bioengineer who uses nature as inspiration to create a whole range of medical products.
It's just one of the many tools that we may use to solve a problem. When we encounter challenges, we turn to nature for inspiration, and then we improve on those ideas for our own purposes.
Jeff needed to find an adhesive to deal with septal defect in babies. That's a hole in between the chambers of the heart, and a Band-Aid just wouldn't cut it. Okay, just imagine the challenges. Working with a living heart. It's constantly moving, expanding, contracting, 60 beats a minute. And plus, well, it's just messy. So Jeff looked to nature for a solution.
So we asked what creatures exist within wet dynamic environments, and we looked to the land and in the sea. And so in the sea, you have sandcastle worms that attach to rocks, and the waves, the surf is constantly hitting them and they're remaining put. And then on the land, you have slugs and snails. Sometimes you'll see like a snail attached to a leaf and it's raining and it stays put, it's not falling off. And sometimes you'll see the goo behind that snail as it's walking across the ground. And so what we realize is these creatures have something in common, which is viscous secretions.
Is it a mucus?
It's kind of like a mucus, yeah. And what's interesting about materials like mucus or other types of viscous secretions is that they have inherent adhesive properties. So we took a closer look at these materials, and they contain hydrophobic agents which can repel water.
That inspired Jeff and his team to invent a glue that would stick in a wet environment and wouldn't wash away. The basic raw materials are naturally found inside the human body.
So what we've done here is we've punctured a hole with a biopsy punch, and this mimics a cardiac defect in real life.
So how do you go about gluing this hole?
So first I'm going to show that we're going to have some blood spurting out, fake blood splurting out.
Green blood.
Yeah. From the hole, you can see trickles of blood flowing out. Now I'm going to fill in the hole with the glue.
This procedure is really critical. The glue is a fluid, so you can inject through a small hole in the body so they don't have to open up the heart.
So it's minimally invasive for real-life surgery,
yes,
and faster than what we do right now.
Yes.
So now that we have filled in the hole with the glue, we're going to UV cure it. We're going to have to put on glasses.
To protect from UV light?
Yes.
Okay.
So
this is very cool. UV light is used to set the glue in just 5 seconds. Once again, minimally invasive, minimal time.
This is a result of almost 10 years of work.
To come up with the right material?
Yes.
Wow. So after curing it, the idea is that it's going to be hard to the touch?
Yes. So.
Which it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And now I'm going to try to syringe some blood into it and see if the glue stops the blood from flowing out. And as you can see, none of it's flowing out.
Flowing out.
Mm-hmm.
So the organ just absorbs it.
Mm-hmm.
This is glue that's able to work with 100% stickiness inside a wet, gooey body. And it works.
It's becoming crystal clear that it would be virtually impossible for an individual to invent a product like this. So it's not surprising that Jeff Karp surrounds himself with like-minded problem solvers from around the world.
The team is critical to the process. So for example, in the lab, we've had people from 30 different countries, and these different ways of thinking can be very complementary and can be synergistic. The team also is highly diversified. So we have people who are biologists, we have chemists, we have material scientists, we have all kinds of engineers. We've had a gastrointestinal surgeon in the lab, a cardiac surgeon, we've had a dentist in the lab. And so it's a very lateral environment. So people are free to brainstorm and come up with ideas and work together. And so that to me is really fundamental to the process.
Teamwork. Makes sense. Share responsibilities and maximize experiences. That's what these young inventors did. They're former students at Glen Forest Secondary School in Mississauga, and their invention won the Biomimicry Institute's Global Design Award. Their invention, called Stille, from the Greek word meaning drop, gathers water from the air before it evaporates. The team drew their inspiration from several aspects of nature.
Was the fact that the competition was focused on biomimicry something that motivated you to get involved?
Just learning about what biomimicry was and seeing how well it aligned with our interests in sustainability and the environment and design kind of made us want to do the competition even more.
There's no doubt that for these women, coming together to create an invention from scratch and winning an international design competition has been a rewarding experience. Their advice to any budding inventors? Don't beat yourself up over what you don't know.
There's definitely anxiety about looking stupid, about not being good enough. And I think it's fine to just calm down a little bit and understand that you don't have to be perfect. You don't need to know everything.
We need dreamers because there's a lot of people who can do things too. Yeah. So finding people who even have those ideas, just because you can't do it doesn't mean it can't happen.
You need to believe that we can be better, that we can do more. So that's just really important to me.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Great. How does it work?
As the blades turn, warm air is pulled in underneath the cover, like so. And as the warm air meets the blades, which are kept cool by the circuitry inside, the moisture begins to condense on its surface. The moisture will slowly drip down into our reservoir, which can then be pulled from by the irrigation system.
Yeah, and these blades are a really good example of how we drew inspiration from the fog-stand beetle, which is a beetle that stands on its head and allows moisture to collect on its body so then it could drink.
We also modeled the blades after the ribs of a cactus because not only does it increase surface area to draw in water, but the ribs themselves actually provide shade on the other ribs, so it prevents water loss. This vessel that we have over here for storing the water was modeled after the desert rose, and during the rainy season, it actually expands to hold in that extra water.
So by taking these different characteristics that a variety of species have, plants and insects, and putting them together, you've come up with something that can fill a glass with water from thin air. And that is pretty amazing.
We can make a change, right? Even though we're just high school sitting in this classroom, working after school, we have the ability to make a difference.
I gotta say, I was really impressed with these women. It makes me wonder, how many brilliant inventions are out there, just waiting to be discovered? So far, all of the inventors I've met are doing just fine. They're successful, and they have huge support systems in place. But I also want to meet some inventors who are not quite there yet. Inventors who have spent years following their dreams and still have further to go. Dan Watson is excited. He's excited because his invention is oh so close to becoming a reality. And he's so confident that it will happen that he recently quit his day job. Your website reads, Dan Watson thinks a little bit differently. What do you mean by that?
I think that everyone has the capacity to think differently. I think some people embrace it more. I like to embrace my different thinking and the way that I approach different problems or things that I'm working on. It's just allowing that personality, that sort of individual approach to things to come into your process.
Dan wants to change the way we catch fish. Fishing nets don't discriminate. They trap whatever is in their path. That's a problem because, for a variety of reasons, a lot of the fish have no value to the fishermen. So the unwanted fish, that for the most part are dead, get dumped. This wasted fish is called bycatch, and some estimates claim it makes up 20% of all fish caught.
The bycatch approach came from hearing stories about fishermen who'd been caught catching the wrong fish. Beyond just catching the wrong fish, they'd been prosecuted, they were being fined. Essentially, they had this problem but no tools to redress it on their own terms.
And what's the solution that you've come up with?
So Safety Net's whole approach to lowering bycatch revolves around light. We have seen a bunch of experiments, and we've done some of our own, where people have put lights into different trawling gears or fishing gears, and you can see a real difference in how the fish respond, and therefore which ones you're actually catching in that gear. So by changing that light, you can really affect which fish you're keeping and which ones you're sort of scaring away.
So like a moth to a flame, a certain fish would come towards a lit object?
We've seen attraction and repulsion. We've also seen things where it's simply just lighting up an area of the net that some fish can see and others can't.
How does Safety Net work?
So this is Pisces. It fits into fishing nets really quite simply, but essentially this emits lots of light. So if I show you now, you can change the wavelength, You can sort of the color comes in different ways. You can change how it flashes and how bright it is as well.
And each one of those lights can be programmed by the fishermen to do whatever it is that they want to do that day.
Yeah, so we've worked really closely with the fishing sector to understand how it would be simple enough to program this to affect the species that they're looking for.
So if I'm a fish and I'm inside a trolley net, and this has been programmed to allow me to escape, how am I going to be able to escape?
If we put this around, for instance, a square mesh panel, so this is an area of the net that is designed to be easy to escape from, and we want you to see that specifically, we'll put something that would attract you towards it so that you see it, maybe you investigate it, and you're like, oh, there's a way out, I'm going to go. Like a big emergency escape sign. On the other hand, if we don't want you to escape from that area, we might put a light on that actively makes you swim away from it so that you're scared of it, so that you don't go anywhere near the escape panel and you're more likely to stay in the actual trawl. So that's how we're using light as a sort of push-pull mechanism.
Watson has been working on Pisces for several years. When he started, he was on his own.
Did it ever get lonely?
Oh, it's super lonely. When you're first starting a business, it's just one of the loneliest things when you're on your own. I would recommend find a partner to start it with before you start, or at least early on. Someone that's really bought into it in the way that you are and has the passion to do the same thing.
Why?
Because it's so easy to get caught up in your own thinking and ideas. Not having people to bounce ideas off and really test your thinking means you can go down some really weird rabbit holes. You look back and like, why did I spend all that time on that one thing? But you're on your own, so you carry on.
There were times when Dan did consider quitting.
You do look around from time to time and be like, why am I still doing this? Like, if I walked away from this, what would happen? Nothing would stop. Nothing would change. It can be quite a struggle to keep going in these circumstances. From time to time, you run out of money or you run out of access to things and you go, how am I ever going to do this?
Are there then things that happen along the way that build confidence and allow you to push forth? I mean, how important is this notion of confidence to being an inventor?
It's never going to be there from day one, because if you're doing something truly new, you are proving it, right? No one's done this before. That's why you're doing what you're doing. But the more of those milestones you clear, the more that you learn about what your idea is about and how true it is, then it starts to scale up how fast things are working as well. Because you can go to someone and be like, I know it works, here's the proof. Now help me do the next bit.
When you see a problem generally, do you just want to come up with a solution to it?
Yeah, I think everyone does. You walk around the world and you're like, how is this so broken? Or like, how has no one approached this or found the value in solving it? I'm sure everyone sees it on a daily basis. And the difference is then whether or not you decide to carry on with it and go and fix it yourself or wait for someone to fix it for you.
Dan Watson isn't the only inventor who saw a problem and set about fixing it.
I'm here with Anne Magazinski, the inventor of the hollow flashlight. But I think we need a little more light than this. Yeah, that's better. And what is special about this flashlight?
Well, it's a flashlight that runs off the heat of the human hand, so no batteries are required.
And where did the inspiration come from?
I got the inspiration when I was around in grade 10, and I'm half Filipino and half Polish. So one of my friends back in the Philippines told me that she had failed her grade in school because she didn't have any electricity, so she had no light to study with at night. And that really surprised me because I was, 14 or 13, and a girl just like me who I was friends with, just in a different part around the world, didn't have something as simple as light. So I decided to base my science fair project that year on a problem and create a flashlight that didn't require any batteries and just ran off the heat of your hand.
So how does it work?
So the flashlight works with these tiles, which are called Peltier tiles. They're otherwise known as thermoelectric generators. So when you heat one tile and you cool the other side, a small amount of electricity is produced. So what I decided to do was to heat one side with the palm of my hand and cool the other side with a heat sink or a hollow aluminum heat sink, which is how the name hollow flashlight came to be. And then by heating one side of this tile with my hand and cooling the other side with the heat sink, I run the electricity through a circuit and you get light. That's how it works.
It's surprisingly simple.
It's pretty simple, yeah. That's why I don't understand. People are like, wow, that's so exciting.
A lot of people did get excited about Anne's design. In fact, at age 15, she won the Google Science Fair, an event that launched her celebrity status and boosted her social media profile.
I loved making and working on something after school, and then I loved talking to people. So just like making and talking is like my two passions.
Like Dan Watson, Anne has already put in several years trying to get her hollow flashlight to market.
I think what's kept me going with the flashlight is the fact that I made this with a purpose to help other people who didn't have light, and I want that to happen in the future where I can give these flashlights and physically hand this over to someone who doesn't have electricity.
Have there ever been moments when you felt like walking away from it?
Yes, there has. There's been many times with the flashlight where I've felt like giving up just because it has been so difficult to get it onto market and because I don't have that engineering knowledge to get it to the brightness I want it to be.
That has been a challenge, increasing the flashlight's brightness to make it marketable. But Anne's working on that.
I think if I surround myself with people who do have experience in the fields that I need for the flashlight, I think that's going to really help.
In the meantime, Anne is kept busy with school, social media, and working on other inventions. I was a little surprised to see that the hollow flashlight is still not quite there. And while Anne and Dan have certainly paid their dues in terms of the time they've put in, it seems that overnight success is just a very rare thing in the world of invention. Having said that, I'm going to meet an inventor who changed the way we see the world. And he did that in a mere 2 years.
Shaky and bad.
You may not know his name, but if you've seen a movie in the last 40 years, or if you like to watch sports on TV, then you've almost certainly seen Garrett Brown's inventions at work. His best-known invention? Steadycam.
So watch this. This is such a beautiful move.
Walking with balance.
Steadycam is a harness that enables a camera operator to run, jump, and climb stairs, all the while maintaining a smooth, stable image. Garrett started out as a folk singer, then became a copywriter, but what he really wanted to do was work in movies. So he set up a film production company in his hometown of Philadelphia.
And our little film company in Philly specialized in special effects, technical spots.
Tricky shots.
Tricky shots, yeah. So I got an enormous dolly and put my tiny little camera on it with its little spring wind. So pin-headed, so silly looking. I might have been the most incentivized person to disconnect camera from cameraman.
Solve your problem.
That's it. I wanted it personally. You know, that began the idea that if you want something, then maybe you can have it rather than just put up with not having it. I started a 2-year process to try and disconnect the camera from my ever-moving self.
To sell his invention to Hollywood, Garrett photographed a series of impossible shots.
Just casually, my wife Ellen and I were driving around Philly and we said, let's run down the art museum steps. And Ellen ran all the way down and all the way back up. And I chased her all the way down with the prototype with this fiber optic viewfinder, which is a bit hazardous. You're navigating with one eye. The director of Rocky was prepping that film and he found us and said, you know, how did you do that and where are those steps? So that's why that ended up in Rocky. And I ended up chasing Stallone up those steps a few months later.
And soon after that, everyone was chasing Garrett because everyone wanted Steadycam.
I wish I could say it felt exhilarating and wonderful and so on, but in the middle of something like that, your anxiety about its ultimate outcome is still with you, you know? And it's a primitive thing that, you know, may break and is having changes made to it. It wasn't the wonderful leaping through the park, you know, full of exhilaration thing that might have been, but I'm not complaining.
How does the Steadycam work?
It's a combination invention. If you expand how a camera is built, take its various masses and put them at a distance from each other, for example, a monitor and a battery, don't put them on the camera, put them down below. That means that somewhere between the battery and the monitor and the camera, there's a balance point.
Sure.
At that balance point, the center of balance, you put a gimbal, which is rings within rings so that you hold the outer ring and nothing you do affects the angle of the inner one. And well, now you have an object that, you know, no matter what you do holding it, it won't get through to the lens. And you can aim this object with your fingers, but you still have to hold it up. So that led to a spring-loaded double-acting arm, a forearm, an upper arm, and a shoulder joint that you can dial up so it makes whatever it's holding act like it's on the move or in zero gravity, right? And one thing missing, you gotta see through the lens.
Now, why is it that our human brains respond so well to seeing the images through the Steadycam as compared with a handheld?
Well, this is a pet peeve of mine because we see ourselves as we walk around making our own lifelong movie. We move and we see things smoothly. You see things like a Steadycam as you walk around. Your brain is a marvelous stabilizer. Even if you shake your head up now, go ahead.
It's steady.
It's still, right?
Yeah.
But I'm watching your eyes. Your eyes are fixed on me, you know? Your brain is moving your eye muscles, right?
Same with this direction.
Yeah, exactly. We see things marvelously steady.
With the success of Steadycam, Garrett was suddenly in demand as an operator. Over the next few years, he worked with virtually every A-list director in Hollywood, and he picked up an Oscar along the way. He also established a school to teach others to use Steadycam. Now, he could have sat back and taken it easy, but as I'm learning, inventors don't retire. Garrett went on to invent SkyCam. That's the camera that gives you a bird's eye view over football games. He followed that with the Dive Cam, and then the Moby Cam. And it's not just camera-related devices. Garrett is big on personal inventing. His latest innovation grew from a desire to read his iPad in bed.
But mainly you just get into stuff like this and you get excited about it. This is a dynamic suspension bridge.
Yes, it is.
If you slack it, you can put it anywhere. If you let the weight down on it, then it tightens up.
Look at that.
And it's pretty damn strong.
So as long as that string doesn't break.
The string has never broken. It's very dangerous for an inventor to say anything like that because now it will instantly break during this demo.
Murphy's Law.
I wanted a great gimbal. I wanted to be able to be horizontal or vertical. I wanted to be at any attitude, you know. And it's held at the center of gravity of the iPad. Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This clever device doesn't even have a name yet, but I want one. What advice do you give people who want to invent?
Don't try to invent something for money. If you want something and it doesn't exist, try to invent that.
That's exactly what Garrett did. And in doing so, changed the way we see the world. When the iconic $6 Million Man appeared on TV in the 70s, it was an immediate hit. Of course, back then, the idea of rebuilding astronaut Steve Austin's arm, legs, and left eye with bionic parts was pure science fiction. Today, that fantastic piece of science fiction is about to become science fact. Graham Langford suffers from retinitis pigmentosa, an inherited degenerative eye disease that eventually leads to complete blindness. Today, he's come back to Toronto Western Hospital hoping to change that, thanks to a bionic eye invented by Robert Greenberg.
The retina, the active part of the back of the eye, is like a layer cake. And one of the layers are called the photoreceptors. That's what normally changes the light into electrical signals that go back to the brain. In retinitis pigmentosa, those photoreceptors are dead. And so what we're doing is we're actually activating the next layer of cells electrically.
For inventor Robert Greenberg, this story began 25 years ago when a retinal surgeon invited him into an operating room for the very first time.
Patient with retinitis pigmentosa. And he took a wire, put the wire in this patient's eye, held it in place, turned on the electronics, and asked the patient what he saw. And the patient saw a spot of light. And then he took a second wire, says, okay, what do you see now? And the patient says, okay, I see 2 spots of light. And at that moment, I was kind of hooked because I knew that if we could see 2 spots of light, you could do hundreds or maybe thousands someday and just create images just like the lights on a scoreboard or pixels on your monitor. And so I thought, this is just an engineering project at this point.
That engineering project resulted in Robert inventing a new way of seeing. The patient wears glasses with a small black and white camera attached. The image from the camera is converted into electricity and wirelessly transmitted to an implant that contains 60 very small metal discs. When electric current comes out of one of those discs, the patient sees a spot of light.
Once they put that on, they can see again. At this point, it's relatively crude vision, but it's enough to begin to get around. It's life-changing for patients that are completely blind.
At Toronto Western Hospital, Graham Langford is hopeful, but also realistic.
I'm hoping I can see as much as I possibly can, of course, you know, but I know that it's not going to be the same as somebody who's got normal sight.
You've done a lot of these activations by now. How does it generally go?
There are some patients that are able to identify in which direction someone is walking past them on activation day. And there are more often than not patients that are struggling to understand how a person standing in front of them is different from everything that's around them. That part is done.
Graham's device is about to be activated.
I don't think I've been so nervous in all my life.
3, 2, 1. Am I moving my hand in front of your camera right now?
Well, there's something going on.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Somewhere around here. I'm seeing flashes of light, but I have no idea what they are.
You're recognizing it. You just have to start to make sense of what this movement, what these flashes really mean.
Okay.
Okay?
No, I guess I thought that I would see people in silhouette and all that sort of stuff, but I can't.
Mm-hmm. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some practice.
The biggest thing that we hear from patients is they'd like the resolution to be better. Right now, it's relatively crude vision. You know, life-changing and important and being able to move around, but they'd love to have normal vision back.
Greenberg and the team at Second Sight are taking lessons learned from Argus 2 and applying them to a daring new invention that has the potential to cure any form of blindness. Called the Orion, this device, still in development, will bypass the optic nerve and go directly to the brain.
It's probably the most excited I've been about our technology since the very beginning, since that very first day. I do feel like we're at a point where all that years of effort is at the point where it can pay off for a very large number of patients.
We are going to Mars. That's not some fanciful, wishful thinking. NASA has a schedule. The Curiosity has already been there, checking out the atmosphere. InSight, its current mission, will probe deep beneath the red planet. Within the next decade, they plan on conducting robotic round trips, and after that, sometime in the 2030s, humans. I've come to the University of Guelph in Ontario to meet Mike Dixon, whose invention will solve one of the biggest challenges with interplanetary travel.
Food determines how far from Earth we can go and how long we can stay. It is the main limiting variable in human space exploration going forward.
Because the distance between Earth and Mars is constantly changing as we orbit the sun, a manned Mars mission would take a lot longer.
When you get to Mars 6 or 7 months after you leave Earth, Earth is gone. It's on its way around the sun and you're going half the pace. So it's a good, 2.5 year kind of round trip to Mars.
That's a lot of lunches to pack, which brings us to Mike's invention, SALSA, Space and Advanced Life Support Agriculture. Basically a big blue box to grow your own food when you get there.
So tell me about the chambers. How do they work to actually grow the food?
Simple stuff, nutrient, film, conventional hydroponic system. And the challenge technically is to have this plant production system function reliably and indefinitely. Can't break. And you can't throw anything away. There's no waste when you go to space.
Mars is almost a vacuum, and it's almost all carbon dioxide, a harsh environment for growing anything. But Mike's chambers can handle all that.
We can environmentally modify the plants rather than genetically modify them because the environment trumps the breeding program.
Light also seems to be an important factor.
Now that we have really powerful, highly efficient LED light sources, it gives us the opportunity to peek into the response of plants in very fine detail because we can manipulate, we can play a tune with the environment. We can improve on nature, if that's not too sacrilegious.
I think that's quite a surprising thing for people. They don't understand that environmental tweaks can be so powerful in shaping what a plant grows into. Where did the idea for this project come about?
I guess I'm a Trekkie, as many of us were.
Yeah.
And I have an obvious and normal interest in space science and space exploration, and that sort of stuff is, kind of piqued my interest when I was a kid.
So, Mike, what are these here?
Okay, this is lettuce, and it's a variety called New Red Fire. So these are genetically identical. All I've changed is the color of the light. That's the only environmental difference, and you can readily see that it changes the size, shape, color, and you're going to tell me if it changes the taste.
A taste test?
Yeah.
All right.
So just peel a little piece off of one of these guys.
Okay, so this is...
This is grown in red light only, so get that taste in your memory bank.
Tastes like a good standard lettuce.
Okay, so now we're into white light, which is pretty close to what we conventionally think of as a grow light.
It's a much milder taste.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a bit
I'll take your word for it. I don't
emptier.
eat lettuce much.
You're on lettuce plants.
Okay, so
All
now,
right.
now we'll try the green one.
It's got some kick. It's a little spicier.
And finally, the blue.
Mm-hmm. This one's my favorite, I think.
Really?
It's a little bit smooth. Yeah, I would like a big salad
Okay.
made of that.
So we'll pass that on to the commercial lettuce growers.
Okay, great. Yeah, go for the blue. Okay, so the same plant, genetically identical, 4 different lights. You have 4 totally different tastes.
Whoever is chosen for the first interplanetary mission, one thing is certain. They're guaranteed a healthy diet.
So, what have I learned about inventors on this journey? Inventors are problem solvers. They're creative, but most importantly, they've got grit. They just carry on regardless, and they are not afraid to fail. Apart from that, though, there is no type as such. The white-haired Edison figure is long dead. Old, young, women, men are working together or alone, constantly redefining the face of invention today. All that's required is a good idea, hard work, and follow through. So what are you waiting for? Go invent something.